The river town of Brookhaven has always felt like a quiet companion to my life, and for years, I believed my days would flow as gently as its waters. My name is Eleanor Hayes, I am 34, and I teach languages at a small community school near the old stone bridge. Most people would say my life looked simple, almost predictable, and for a long time, I found comfort in that. I was married to Jonathan Hayes, 39, a calm and thoughtful HR manager who carried responsibility the way others carry breath. He rarely raised his voice, rarely rushed, rarely faltered. With him, everything seemed steady. We shared a modest house with a white porch, a warm kitchen, and shelves full of books we pretended we would finish someday. Our evenings were slow, tea at 8, soft music humming in the background, the two of us trading stories about work. On weekends, we wandered the park trails, fingers intertwined, as if the world outside our bubble didn't matter. I believed I was living in a marriage built on safety, trust, and quiet warmth. Looking back, it was the calm before a storm I never saw coming. Every morning in our quiet Brookhaven home began with the same gentle routine. Jonathan always woke up a little earlier than me, just enough time to grind fresh coffee beans and brew a cup exactly the way I liked, mild, warm, and slightly sweet. He would place it on my bedside table with a smile, saying, "Rise slowly, Ellie." It became one of the smallest but most comforting rituals of my life. In the evenings, I usually handled dinner. I enjoyed chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and setting the table while Jonathan leaned against the kitchen counter, telling me stories from his office. Funny co-workers, small victories, annoying meetings. His voice filled the room, and the sound felt like home. After dinner, we often curled up on the sofa to watch movies or played our favorite board games. Jonathan pretended to hate losing, but he always let me win the final round. On weekends, we strolled through Riverside Park, sometimes buying hot chocolate and talking about our dreams. At that time, our biggest shared hope was having a child. We had even picked out 2 names, Emma for a girl and Caleb for a boy. Jonathan would place a hand on my shoulder and say, "Someday soon." I believed him with all my heart. There were so many little gestures that made me feel cherished. A bouquet of daisies after a long day. A handwritten note tucked into my book that said, "You make life softer." A gentle reminder before bedtime, "Don't stay up too late, my love." I never questioned any of it. I never once checked his phone or doubted his intentions. Trust felt natural, automatic. Looking back, those peaceful days were like the calm before a storm I never saw coming. The love felt real, warm, steady, making the shock that followed even more devastating. That evening began like any other. Jonathan was taking a shower after a long day at work, and I was in the living room folding laundry, enjoying the faint sound of running water and the calm rhythm of our usual routine. Nothing felt unusual, until his phone lit up on the table. At first, I didn't intend to look. I had never touched his phone before, not even out of curiosity. But the notification appeared right in my line of sight, glowing in the dim room. A name I hadn't heard in years, Mira Caldwell. His ex-girlfriend. My fingers froze. A part of me whispered to ignore it, to keep folding the towels, to trust the man I married. But then the preview of the message slid across the screen, and everything inside me tightened. The doctor said everything is fine. The baby is growing well. My heart didn't just drop, it collapsed. My breath became sharp and thin. I stared at the phone, convincing myself I had misread the words. But the message remained there, cruelly clear. My hand moved before my mind could stop it. I unlocked his phone. He never bothered to change the passcode, and opened the conversation. What I found wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a hidden world. Message after message spilled across the screen. Mira talking about morning sickness. Jonathan asking if she had eaten. Photos from clinic visits. Reminders about upcoming appointments. And in between, Jonathan's gentle reassurance. "I'll take care of everything. Just focus on the baby." My stomach twisted. I scrolled further. More messages. More intimacy. More plans. Then I found the bank transfers, months of financial support, regular amounts. Quiet, calculated, consistent. My hands began to tremble so violently I nearly dropped the phone. A baby. His baby. A child he never mentioned. A child that wasn't mine. For a moment, the world became silent. No running water. No ticking clock. No thoughts, just the heavy weight of disbelief crushing my chest. How long had this been happening? Was my marriage just a carefully painted illusion? Had I been living beside a stranger? Questions spiraled inside me, hitting harder with every breath. I walked backward until my knees gave out, and I sank onto the cold wooden floor. The phone slid from my hand, landing with a soft thud, but the truth it carried was anything but soft. I pressed my palms to my face, but the tears broke through anyway, hot and unstoppable. In that moment, alone in the dim room, I realized that the life I believed in, the marriage I trusted, the future I was planning, had shattered in a single notification. And nothing would ever be the same again. When Jonathan stepped out of the bathroom, steam still clinging to his skin, he found me standing in the hallway with his phone in my hand. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. My voice was steady in a way that scared even me. "Jonathan," I asked, "that baby, is it yours?" He froze. For a moment, the room was painfully silent, just the dripping of water from his hair onto the floor. Then he sank into the armchair like his legs could no longer hold him. His shoulders trembled. "Yes," he whispered. "It's mine." Something inside me cracked, sharp and quiet. He went on, stumbling through explanations. He told me it had happened only once. A stupid mistake, he said. He claimed he never meant for it to go this far. Mira had contacted him months later saying she was pregnant. He panicked. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want to hurt me with the truth, so he tried to handle everything behind my back. The doctor visits. The money transfers. The late-night messages. All of it. I listened, but the words felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's tragedy. A storm of emotions surged inside me, betrayal so deep it made my chest ache, disappointment so heavy it felt like a weight pressing on my lungs, and humiliation. Ugly, burning humiliation, because everyone else seemed to know my husband was becoming a father, except me. My marriage, the life I had believed in, suddenly felt like a set of fragile glass pieces someone had dropped onto concrete. I told him I couldn't accept this. I couldn't pretend this child wouldn't always stand between us. I couldn't imagine waking up every morning knowing my husband had created a family outside our home. Jonathan reached for me, but I stepped back. The distance between us had never felt wider. Then his phone rang. Myra's name flashed across the screen. He hesitated, looked at me with guilt flooding his face, then answered. Her voice was sharp even through the speaker. She was in pain. She needed to go to the hospital immediately. Without another word, Jonathan grabbed his keys and ran out the door. He didn't look at me. Not even once. The click of the door closing was the sound of something final. I stood alone in the dim living room, surrounded by the remnants of our quiet life. Our wedding photo on the shelf, the 2 mugs we used every morning, the blanket we shared on movie nights. My arms wrapped around my body instinctively, but the emptiness inside remained vast and cold. In that moment, I realized the truth. Jonathan's heart was no longer mine. Maybe it hadn't been for a very long time. I moved into my best friend Harper's apartment the day after everything fell apart. Her guest room was small, quiet, and smelled faintly of lavender. Yet during those first nights, I felt like I was sinking into an endless void. I couldn't sleep. Not a real sleep, just long hours of staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my marriage as if searching for a hidden clue. I skipped meals, pushing food around the plate while Harper watched me with worried eyes. Even going to school felt impossible. I had no strength to stand in front of my students with a steady smile. Worst of all, I blamed myself for everything. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe Jonathan wanted something I failed to give. Maybe Mira had something I never did. One evening, when I finally broke down in Harper's kitchen, she pulled me into a tight hug and whispered, "Eleanor, you didn't cause this. You are hurting because you loved honestly. That is not a mistake." Her words hit me harder than the betrayal itself. Over the next few weeks, through late-night talks and silent mornings, I began to look at my life from a distance. For years, I had shaped every routine, every decision, every dream around Jonathan's comfort. I thought that made a strong marriage. I thought that was love. But in Harper's apartment, surrounded by unfamiliar walls and an unexpected stillness, I finally heard my own voice, small at first but growing clearer each day. I realized I had been disappearing slowly, quietly, without noticing. And losing Jonathan made me see how much of myself I had abandoned along the way. The pain didn't vanish, but something new emerged beneath it, a thin, soft line of self-respect. A fragile beginning. A light I hadn't felt in years. And for the first time since discovering the truth, I believed that maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. I began rebuilding my life slowly, almost cautiously, as if every step might break me again. But day by day, I realized I was stronger than I had believed. The first thing I did was sign up for an evening art class. I had loved drawing when I was younger, but years of marriage, routines, and responsibilities had buried that part of me. Sitting in a bright studio with brushes, colors, and quiet music felt like breathing again. My hands trembled the first time I touched a canvas, but the more I painted, the more I felt my heart loosen. Every morning, I pushed myself to get out of bed and run along the riverside path. At first, my body resisted, my chest tightened, my legs felt heavy, but the cold air cleared my mind. Running became a ritual of release. With every step, I left behind a little anger, a little sadness, a little guilt. I ran not to escape my past, but to reclaim my future. At home, I started a small blog where I shared reflections about healing, resilience, and simple English learning tips. I wrote honestly, sometimes too honestly, about heartbreak, trust, and rebuilding confidence. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but somehow, the blog reached more people than I imagined. Strangers left warm comments, sharing their own vulnerable stories. Their words wrapped around me like a quiet embrace. I wasn't alone anymore, and that realization changed everything. Around that time, Caleb Turner, a colleague I used to teach with, reached out. He never crossed any lines, never tried to become more than a supportive presence. He simply checked in on me now and then, asking how I was doing, reminding me that healing wasn't a race. His kindness was gentle, steady. Nothing like the emotional chaos Jonathan had put me through. It wasn't love. It didn't need to be. It was just light, at a time when I needed it most. Months passed, and with them, so did the sharpest edges of my pain. One afternoon, Jonathan asked to meet. The moment he sat down in front of me, I felt the old ache stir, but only faintly. He apologized, truly apologized, and said he wanted to fix our marriage. But I had already fixed something much more important, myself. I finally understood what self-love meant. It wasn't selfishness, it was survival. It was choosing a life where I didn't have to compete for affection or share my husband with another woman. It was choosing peace over familiar pain. So I told him no. Calmly. Firmly. Without anger, without tears. Walking away wasn't the hardest part. Realizing I deserved better was. And that realization became the most powerful turning point of my life. I stand on the old Brookhaven Bridge, watching the river shimmer under the soft glow of the streetlights. The night air is cool, gentle, and strangely comforting. For months, this river has witnessed my silence, my tears, and my slow return to myself. Tonight, it feels like it is witnessing the closing of one chapter, and the quiet beginning of another. As I lean against the railing, I replay the emotional path that brought me here. A life that once felt peaceful and safe. A trust one believed would never bend. A moment of doubt that shattered everything. A wave of pain that nearly drowned me. A collapse so deep it pushed me into loneliness. And finally, the long, steady journey toward healing. I think about the woman I was before all of this happened, gentle, devoted, hopeful. And I think about the woman I am now, stronger, braver, clearer about what I deserve. Healing did not come from time alone. It came from choosing myself again and again, even on the days I felt lost. Looking at the water below, I speak softly, almost like leaving a message for whoever needs it. Trust is the foundation of every relationship. When it breaks beyond repair, you are allowed to choose yourself. Some people stay and rebuild. Some people walk away to protect their peace. There is no right or wrong, only what your heart can carry. So I turn to you, the listener of my story, and I ask, if you were in my place, would you stay, or would you walk away? I breathe in deeply, letting the night wrap around me like a quiet promise. This is not an ending. It is the first step of a new beginning. Share your thoughts in the comments and follow the channel for more emotional English listening stories.